And so he says, work out your salvation with fear and trembling. Now, what does he mean by that? Well, the idea that he's presenting here is that salvation is something that is continually being outworked in our lives. We get saved, but that's not the end of the story. We get saved, and that brings us into the people of God. That brings us into a place where we are now potentially led by God, now potentially being transformed into that image that God has set before us. But the process has only just begun. We're not finished. In fact, we've barely even started at that point. What God needs to do with us now, every day for the rest of our lives, is to continue to work out that salvation. Now, what is that salvation? Well, it's a couple of things. Firstly, it's his image, it's his likeness, it's sanctification, it's looking like him, it's bearing the fruits of the Spirit, it's taking on those characteristics of what it means to be a Christian, what it means to be Christ-like. So it's the generic, sort of the general picture of Christ. That's what God is continually working out in us. And that takes time. We never actually get there. We're never perfected. That's the point. We're never going to be perfect. We are being perfected all the time, being moved towards that place, but we don't ever achieve that until we're taken into perfection. But that's beyond death. So until that point, we're a work in progress. We're constantly being worked on. So salvation is that. It's the sanctification, but it's also our calling. Now, Ephesians 2:10 talks about this idea of that God created us in Christ Jesus to do good works which God prepared in advance for us to do. So there's this idea, this sense that God has put a particular calling on our lives as well. We're put here for a reason. We're not an accident. There's no fluke in humans. And when we come to Christ, what we're actually discovering is what his plan was for. Why do we do the things we do? Why do we think the way we think? Why do we have the certain skills that we have that maybe others don't? Why do we sort of have a disposition to liking certain ways of doing things or certain whatever it might be, whereas we don't necessarily like other things, or we don't feel an inclination to do other things, whereas other people do? Like, what is it that this unique element to us that separates, makes us different from other people? That's our calling. God has put something in us, put gifts in our lives to do something for his kingdom. And when we come to him, we discover what that is. And so what God is leading us into is not just his image, but also his calling. It's bringing us into a place where we're doing the things that God made for us. God equipped us and gave us the tools to be able to do that, and to gradually move us into a place where that is what our whole focus is on. All our time, our effort, our energies are being put into that thing that God has called us to. But that all of it takes time. And so what Paul's saying is, work out your salvation with fear and trembling. Work it out. Take your time with it. Continually strive towards unpacking this, and do it with this attitude. Do it with fear and trembling. Now, that's not to say be scared of God, but it's just to understand and respect who he is. He's God. He created us. God is the creator and the sustainer of the universe. He's powerful. He's in control of the situation. And so it's not even just about fear, but it's about trust. It's about recognizing that God is supreme, God is all powerful, and that God also loves us, and God has a calling for us, and he has a desire to make us into his image, and he wants that for our lives. He wants to bring us to that place. And so trust that, be led by that, be driven by that, and respect that above all else. Realize that that is the greatest possible outcome that we can have by the most powerful being that there is. And so be led in that way. Allow ourselves to be unpacked, or continue to unpack this salvation in that spirit, in that sort of disposition towards God.